inside of our project settings, under our job settings in the connections tab, we see that we have a base cat plate schedule here. So I'm going to go ahead and just open mine up from here. And in here we see that we already have a base plate given to us by default. That'll be a piece mark BP1. So for this, we will need to be referring to our sheet S5. This will be our column schedule. And off to the right, we can see our different base plate types. So our BP1 we will just use for our base plate type A. And in this window, we will be working from left to right when we fill out these fields. So for our first one, we'll just keep our piece mark at BP1, and then we'll just check this information that we have already here with our base plate type A. So our plate type will be rectangular. Our thickness is fine at 39. Our length and width is okay at 407. We have 2 whole columns at a spacing of 329. And we have 2 whole rows at the same 329 spacing. Our hole type is going to be anchor bolts for all of our base plates. And our bolt diameter will be 24, which makes our hole diameter 32. Our welds button, if we would choose here, if we would pick that here, we could choose some different information for our welds. And our steel grade is going to be E350 for all of our base plates. And then we will be looking at our more tab when we get down to our BP4 and our BP6 plates. So we'll look at that here in a second. So to continue on, what we'll do is we'll come in here and we'll name our second one BP2. This will also be a rectangular plate. Our thickness here will be 20 millimeters. Our length or diameter is going to be set at 254. The width will be the same at 254. And we will have 2 whole columns. And our column spacing will be 176. And we will have 2 whole rows at 176 as well. If I tab over here, our hole type will be anchor bolts. Our bolt type we can change to 24. And as you can see, when I change that to 24, our hole diameter automatically changes as well. And then what we'll do is we'll pick E350 for our steel grade. And now we can move on to our BP3. So again, I'm just using my tab button on my keyboard to tab through these fields. So now for the piece mark, for our next one can be BP3. This will be a rectangular plate as well. Our thickness for BP3 is going to be 26. Our length and width is going to be the same at 254. Now in this case we will have only 1 whole column, and if I tab here to the next line, we can see that it automatically grays that field out because we can't have a column spacing if we only have 1. And if I tab to the whole rows, we will have 2 whole rows, and then we can specify a spacing for that. That'll be 152. Our hole type is going to be anchor bolt. And then our bolt diameter for this one is going to change to 20. Change that to 20. It'll automatically change our hole diameter to 28. And then we want to specify our E350 steel grade. So now I can tab down to the fourth line. We will use BP4 for this piece mark. And our BP4 will be rectangular as well. The thickness for our BP4 is going to be 32. Our length and width is going to be the same at 254. We will have one hole column here as well. If I tab over, we'll get a grayed out spacing. And then we will have one row column. And then we will have one hole row as well. So we won't be able to specify any spacings. Our hole type will be anchor bolt. And our bolt diameter will be 24, which means our hole diameter will be 32. And then we will specify our steel grade to E350. Now our BP4 is going to have some more information because we are going to be adding in some different legs information for our base plate. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and open this More tab. And in here is where we can specify our different leg lengths and what our column and row spacing is for this base plate. So if we were adding any legs to our base or cap plates, we could use our left side, right side, bottom side, and top side, and enter in these fields here. Our next tab will be round plate holes, which we'll take a look at here in a future base plate. This would allow you to add any holes there. We have an additional holes tab that would allow you to add any holes that wouldn't be, for example, symmetrical. So if you had 3 holes, you could come in here and specify your hole type, diameter, and where to locate those holes at. And then you can specify our drain and vent holes. For this BP4, we will go ahead and take a look at our left side. And as soon as I hit this field for the leg length, we can see on our picture over here a white line appears, and this is explaining what this leg length is referring to. So if we look at our sheet here, we need a leg length of 152. So go ahead and type that in. And then as soon as we either tab down to the next line or click in to the next line, we can see that this is the next dimension that it's looking for. So we're going from the center of our base plate to the first column of holes. So in this case, this distance is going to be 203. And then our columns of holes, we only have one column of holes. And then we don't have a column spacing since we only have one column. We tab down to the vertical, the first hole on the near side is going to be 76. Our rows of holes is only going to be 1. And then our row spacing is 0. And then the vertical to first hole on the far side is going to be the exact same at 76. And then we only have one row of holes there as well. The next thing we can do is go and specify our bottom side. So we don't have anything on our right side. We do have holes on our bottom side, and we need a leg on our bottom side of our base plate. So our leg length here is going to be 152. Our vertical, the first column of holes, is going to be 203. And we will only have one row of holes. We don't have a row spacing. And then our horizontal, the first hole near side, is going to be 76. Our columns of holes is going to be 1. And we don't have a column spacing since we only have one column. And that'll be the same for our horizontal, the first hole on the far side will be 76. Columns of holes will be 1, and we do not have a column spacing. So at this point, we are finished with our More tab, so we can go ahead and just say OK here. And now you noticed we have a little information or an I symbol that pops up on our More button, and that's just indicating that we do have some information specified inside of that More tab. So now we can move back to our line number 5. Here we can specify our piece mark as BP5. This is going to be a rectangular plate as well. Our thickness is going to be 20. Our length and width is going to be the same at 254. We will have 2 whole columns, and our spacing for our columns will be 176. We'll have 2 whole rows, and that'll be the same at 176 for spacing. Our hole type is going to be anchor bolts, and then our bolt diameter we will change to 24, which changes our hole diameter to 32. And then we will specify our steel grade at E350, and we won't have any more information in the More tab. And lastly, we have our BP6, and this plate type is going to be round, so I will specify round. Our thickness for our round plate is going to be 20, and then for our diameter we're going to have set to 330. Now you can see here that all of these fields for our width, our whole column, column spacing, whole rows, and row spacing are grayed out by default. So if we tab over, the next field we have to enter is our hole type, which will be anchor bolt again. Our bolt diameter we can specify to be 20, which makes our hole diameter 28. And then our steel grade is going to be the same at E350. And then in here we can go in and specify some more information. So I'll go ahead and click the More button. And since this is a round plate, what we're going to go to here is our round plate holes. As you can see, anything on our left, right, bottom, and top are grayed out since it's not a rectangular plate. So we need to add in some holes on our round plate holes tab. Our hole count is going to be 4. And then we can tab down to the next line. Once I tab down, it's going to automatically fill in the degrees between holes. If I tab down, our radius is going to be 114. And then our pattern angular offset can remain at 0. And this will be all we need to specify for our round plate. So we can go ahead and say OK to this window. Now that we are done with entering all of our information in for our base and cap plates, we want to make sure that we say OK to this window. We would not want to say cancel to this window. If you would say cancel or if you would X out, none of these changes would remain as saved. You would have to come back in here and redo all of the input that we just did. So we want to go ahead and say OK. And this will bring up an alert saying, note that changes to these marks will not be reflected on gather sheets with a drawing of the original mark. We can go ahead and say OK to this alert. And now we are done with entering in our base and cap plates. Now, I'm going to go back in here to our basic cap plate schedule to show some different things here. So if you notice down at the bottom of this window, we do have a copy plate. So what that would do if you had a line selected, so let's just select this piece mark for example, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say copy plate. If you notice, it just creates a replica of the line, an exact copy, and it gives it a new piece mark. In this case, it just upped to the number 1 to BP7. And to delete out a base or cap plate, all you have to do is come in here and delete out the piece mark and then say OK to this window. If I would open that back up, we can see that we don't have a BP7 anymore. We just have our BP6. If you would delete, say, for example, BP3 up here in the list, it would automatically condense this list down and push these other base plates up in the rows. In this case, we don't want to do that, so we're just going to go ahead and say OK to this window again.